Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Centennial webinar. Uh, you've seen the flyers about long life, about retirement, and that got you curious and you came to the webinar. Thank you for coming. Over the next about 60, 70 minutes, we will take you through a journey of revelations, a few important revelations, a few important reminders that will impact your life significantly. And in that conversation, we'll be talking about time. So, as our dear friend Anand, Rajesh Khanna said in a very old movie, Babu Musha, Zindagi badi honi chahiye, lambi nahi. Life should be large. Live your life in a grand way. It should not be really very long. That's not the criteria. And of course, from Hollywood, we go, and from the America, we get the quote, life is not measured by the number of breaths we take, but by the moments that take our breath away. So, of course, there has been a lot of philosophical thought on the quality of life rather than the quantity of life. So, it raises a few questions, and I've got 4 questions for you. The answers of all these 4 questions are numbers. So, grab a pen, grab a paper, mobile phone, just note down the answers because once you get these 4 numbers, you'll be doing a bit of calculation with these 4 numbers. So, the first question, how old are you? Your age. Fairly simple. Put down that number and keep it ready. The next one is, how old is your oldest relative or a person you know personally? How old is that person? Right? That's the second number. The third is, when do you plan to retire? Everybody has a retirement plan. We are constantly, or at least once in a while, thinking about when we will retire, how will we plan for that. A lot of people are also thinking about early retirement, like retire young, live your life. So, strange concept. I'm still getting my head around it, but yes. So, what is your plan to retire? So, what age you're going to plan to retire? So, that is a number. And finally, how long do you think you will live? So, in other words, I'm being brutal. I'm asking, at what age are you going to die? So, that's the fourth number, right? So, 1, 2, 3, 4, which started with how old are you? That's the first number. How old is your oldest relative or a person you know? When do you plan to retire? And I can't say when do you plan to die, but when do you think you will die? And that will be the fourth number. And now using these 4 numbers, we do a bit of calculation. The first being how many years to your retirement. So retirement age minus your current age is your how many years you have to retire, right? That's the first number you have. That's the time you have to plan for your retirement. But let's look at your retired life. How long will your retired life be? Which is the total expectancy of your life, how long you will live, minus your retirement age. So that will be the time you will be living a retired life. So how many years till retirement and how long your retirement age will be. These are 2 numbers you have got in mind. And the big question, what is your readiness for your retirement? How ready do you think you are for your retired life? That's a big question, right? So I leave you with that question while I move on to, again, of course, Rajesh Khanna, who said, Zindagi badi honi chahiye, lambi nahi. But the fact is, changes are ahead and Zindagi lambi bhi ho rahi hai. Life is getting longer. Uh, Statistics of life expectancy in the year 1800, then 1950, and the latest from 2012. This data itself is 12 years old, but we see that from 1800 to 1950, and if you look, we are searching for India. Above the green arrow is Pakistan, and left to that is India, and just down below again, India on the orange line and on the red line. So life expectancy back in 1800 was around 25, 24, 25, which went up to 35, like increased by 10 years over a 150-year period from 1800 to 1950. But in the next 70, 60, 70 years, by the time 60 years, by the time we reach 2012, that life expectancy for Indians had gone up to 67. If you look at it, look, from 35, it had almost jumped closer to 70, it had almost become double. Now, this is average life expectancy, which means there are a lot of people who are above that age and a lot below that age also. So, if you are living in a leading city of the world or the country, and you have got access to lesser pollution or, of course, better lifestyle, better healthcare, good standard of living, your life is much better than the rest. So, you are going to live longer. And that brings us to the centenarians. People who live above the age of 100. And that's going to be our focus today. We are talking about long life. We are talking about not just long life, but a life which will span almost close to 100 years. So, how many centennials do you think you are? And if you were watching the flyers closely, you would know that back in 2020, there were already 500,000 centenarians across the world. 500,000 before COVID. And then, of course, COVID happened. And next year, by early next year, we expect this number to be 1 million. COVID did really nothing to stop this flow of more and more numbers, more and more people reaching the age of 100. Medical facilities are improving. Access to medical facilities is also improving. Overall conditions of living is improving. Health orientation of people is also improving. So all these factors are contributing. And when they started studying these numbers, they found that these 5 areas across the globe, USA, Costa Rica, Italy, Greece, and Japan, these specific locations, not the entire countries, had a trend where more and more people were above 100. Living beyond 100 was not an exception. It was almost a norm. And these areas, these small, tiny locations, got termed as the blue zones. Singapore is actually preparing to become the first blue zone which is being created rather than naturally occurring blue zone. So, the future is going to be much longer for everyone. So it is extremely crucial to balance your current actions with a view of a longer future. And it's a very important thing. So remember the calculations we did when we had a number that you had in mind, which was how long you are going to live. Now, based on the information which I've shared in the past few minutes, if you are going to change that number to a higher number, you need to recalculate. You need to think about how long do you think you will live again, and based on that, how many years to your retirement. Maybe you're changing your retirement age also. So how many years to retirement, and how long will your retired life be? Because if you're going to live longer and you're going to have a longer retired life, you really need to rethink your life, because that information, that number changing changes everything. Right? Now, it's a great quote by a famous violinist, Stephen. So, if we operate with the belief of long sweeps of time, we build beautiful cathedrals. But if we operate from the fiscal to fiscal quarter kind of thought process, we build ugly shopping malls. And the same is very true for our lives. If we have more time, we will create something grand, big. But if we have very little time, we get lost in the operations of life and just focus on the very, very small things. Now, if you have added life to yourself in the past few minutes, like you've moved your life expectancy from maybe 80 to 90, or from 85 to 95, 90 to 100, you've just added 10 more years to your life. And that gives you access to another 87,000 hours. What are you going to do with all this time? Good question. We know that we have read somewhere that it takes about 10,000 hours to master a skill. In this age of AI and internet and YouTube, Coursera, Udemy, we attend a course of 5 hours, 6 hours, maybe 2 days weekend program and get certified on skills. Okay. But that's just learning of a skill. We haven't really mastered it. To truly master it, it will take about 10,000 hours. Now imagine what you can do with 87 extra hours in your kitty. You can learn skills, utilize them, get benefited from them, and learn one more skill and do the whole cycle again. Right? Bruce Lee's famous quote about the 10,000 kicks, again, highlighting the importance of how much time you can give to a particular skill, the mastery that you can achieve. Right? So essentially, people do not decide their futures. We decide our habits, we decide our lifestyle, and those are the habits which decide our future. So we can plan our future as much as we want, but unless we really bring in those habits, the change in the way we look at ourselves, our lifestyle, our time, Nothing is going to change in our future. Well, coming to the gift we were talking about, and that's the gift of time. We just told you about the extra time you have and how you choose to use and structure that time, right? That extra time that you have got, how do you choose to use and structure the time is at the heart of the response to living longer. This is going to be the most important question you have to ask yourself and you have to answer it, right? This is at the bottom of the screen. I actually have this band running which says this is the most important slide. And I'll make sure that this comes again and I remind you about it. Fine. Another perspective of time. Where do you spend your time with? And it's said that there are about 200, 250 tops relationships that you have over a lifetime. In this age of course, Instagram, LinkedIn, social media, where you have thousands of followers, hundreds of connections, there are too many people you probably know or they know you, but actual relationships are down to about 200, 250 in your entire lifetime. Some of us may have a few more, some less, but this is kind of the average. So this is where you spend your time, right? So many people. But how is this time distributed? Have a look at this. This is a pretty old study, right? The American Times survey from 2009 to 2019, and so on and so forth. But the key is that even here, they are looking at a lifetime of 80 years only. There's another 20 years ahead of that, right? So, as you enter into the second half of your life, the time you spend with yourself increases exponentially. So you better have a great relationship with yourself because you are going to spend all that time alone. We say that people fear public speaking the most, but we all know that when we are alone, that is something, it's not very comfortable. We may not fear it, but that's not a state we want to be in. We want company. And the reason we are not very comfortable with being alone is that we have not been great company to ourselves, right? मैं और मेरी तन्हाई अक्सर ये बातें करते हैं. AB Big B did it well, we are not able to do it. So well, coming to the second factor, the next large amount of time that we will spend is with your spouse, right? So which is why it is said that the most important, that's probably the most important decision that we will take in our lives, deciding who our partner is, because so many of our life decisions will actually depend on that, and you will be spending so much of your time in the second half of your life with your partner. And with the rest of the people, friends, family, co-workers, even your own children, the time you spend with them will drastically come down. So now this is what the general trend is. You might, of course, be able to influence some of this, but more or less it might follow certain trends like this. So that's something for you to think about. That's what life ahead is going to be if you do not do something about it. Okay. You want to be around people, but will they be around? Right? Will they be interested? The way you wake up and you realize that I need to do something about it, will they also be thinking about it? Very important. And we know that people, the way families are moving apart, children move to another city, another country. We ourselves, like I'm sitting in another country right now, away from my family. So all those things are also factual things. So the whole concept of a longer life comes with a lot of these factors, which require us to reconfigure our time. We need to reconfigure our mindset and also our relationships. Right? So that's the conversation about. In the long life conversation that we are having, the Centennial Journey about living 100-year life, we are not here to help you live 100 years. That's kind of automatic. You will probably live till 90 or 100. Your health, of course, you need to take care of it and you need to get better at it. Wealth, of course, a very important part of it, and you will need to take care of it. But the conversation we want to start is about time, mindset, and relationships, which is going to be the absolute foundation of a happier 100-year life. And this is where the Centennial Journey comes in. That is where the crux of the whole journey is. And to talk further, like I am running out of breath now, so I will invite Rishikesh to take over the presentation now and present the Centennial Journey. Over to you, Rishi.
Thanks, Hemant. So, again, so this is a very critical slide, in terms of how do you restructure or utilize your time, right? Is very important because that is the crux of how the rest of your life will be. Okay. And how do we prepare for a happy 100-year life, right? That's very important, right? Uh, Traditionally, we have grown up with a typical three-stage life cycle kind of a mentality, right? 20-25 years of study, 40-45 years of work, and then 10-15-20 years of retired life, right? But the way things are changing and with a longer life, and the amount of changes in the environment, we are clearly seeing that now the life will be a multi-stage life, which of course, as Namita was saying, and she specializes in that, is, how reinventing career path and life purpose with refreshed skills will become very important, right? Because every 10 years, 15 years, we have seen now people transitioning, right? Transitioning from one kind of a role into a very different role. And I'm not talking about only from a career standpoint, but also in terms of the way they look at life itself, either as an explorer or as an independent contractor or an entrepreneurship or in education. And hence we do believe that, we will have to take care of reinventing yourself, more often than our parents or the older generations ever have had to be. And how do we reinvent, or why is this a very important thing, right? Because the longer we live, right, the lesser we have an opportunity to say, oh, but I started here, right? Because the more time you have, the longer the journey, you have more time to change where you come from, or actually change where you will reach. You can't change where you come from, right? And hence, we should look at living by choice, not by chance. And more and more, the longer the life, it is more a result of design rather than destiny. So think about it, right? Maybe 15 years back, if somebody came and said, oh, I had a 2-month career gap, it would be looked very negatively by the HR. But today, people very proudly write sabbatical, wanted to relook at my life, and they take 2 months, 3 months, 6 month gaps, right? So now that's a very common place and pretty acceptable. The key over here is, because of the longer life and the amount of changes that the environment has, options will become extremely valuable, right? So always we would suggest that you keep on looking for options and keep them open for as long as possible. So this article came out around 18 years back, right, in 2005, maybe 19 years back now. That old age starts at 80 as brains keep getting younger, right? So this is a neuroscience related article. We unnecessarily believe that, at the age of 55, 60, we should look at retiring, right? But the brains are still working well. So if there is a choice, and you can actually look at working much longer than 60. The next point that we would like to just touch upon is what normally comes out as work life balance, right? And we usually suggest that, you should look at a work life integration, because a work life balance in itself means that there is life and then there is work which is outside of life, right? But we do believe that we end up spending close to 60% of our life with, people we work with. Now, if that itself is outside of life, then there is a serious problem, right? And we need to figure out how work can be an integral part of life. And hence, we also look at this in terms of recreation is more important than recreation, right? So how do you build your skills, keep a healthy life, keep your relationships well, and that requires time. Now, where do you pull that time from, right, is very important. Yes, the getting the a longer life has an impact on the finance, as Hemant was saying, in terms of how long will your retired life will be. Now that's a question which everybody thinks 100 times, for example, right? Because the longer the retired life, the more financial backup you need to have. But one of the other aspect that we are trying to highlight, and because we are not touching finances in the entire you know program, is there are a lot of other things which are equally, if not more important than getting the finances right. And we want to touch upon those aspects of it. Social dynamics are transforming. We now know more people from more races and more countries than our parents ever did. So the generational complexity is also increasing, right? I mean, gone are the days where people would typically engage with only their age group, or only one, 5, 10 years elder, 5, 10 years younger. Now because of the complicated work structures, most of us end up engaging with a much larger plethora of people. And the other thing that is also happening is that the generations are becoming shorter. So the difference, we used to typically say 20 years is a generational gap. Now I end up believing that even my two kids having a gap of 4.5, 5 years is a generational gap, right? Both of them think very differently. So technology is changing our lives. I mean, it's a given. Very interestingly, a lot of cities are coming up with trying to become smart cities, or smart cities are being created from scratch, like Neom, etc. Clusters are rising where we believe there is a new way of living, and there'll be different laws over there, typically called charter cities. So what are we trying to do over here? What we are trying to do here is to explore the possibilities of what can happen. And then obviously each of us will have our own path to take. And but this is very important, right? So life isn't about finding yourself, right? Yes, it is, and it is not. But life is usually about creating yourself, right? The choices that we make and how we build ourselves is lot important. And how do we build the route, or navigate our path to a longer, happier life? Uh, I mean, we try and keep it more like a Google Map thing, in terms of, let's look at the starting point. We all know where we are. What is the destination point in terms of visualization? We try and find alternate routes, define relevant milestones, and the important thing is understand who our co-passengers in the journey are. And this is something that each of us has to do on their own, right? Or we can support you in doing that. But once you do that, then the only choice you have is how will you plan your time, right? Because wherever there are gaps, you have to spend time either in learning something new, or building a relationship, or whatever else that needs to be done, right? But it's only about planning your time, which will help you recreate your life. So what we're trying to do over here is, when you're trying to redesign your life by restructuring your time, there's a set of tangible assets that we are trying to avoid. Any conversation which is your finances, your houses, and the cars and the gold that you have. But we are focusing more on the uh, philosophical and the psychological aspect of it, the planning aspect of it, where you think about what are your assets. And when we say assets, these are not financial assets, but other assets that you have in life, resources, discovering your logic of life and navigating the path to building a personal path. So coming to assets, which is the first element that one needs to look at. Uh, So we look at both types of assets. There are typically tangible assets and intangible assets. Tangible assets are, as we spoke about, car, gold, houses. We'll try and avoid that. The assumption over here is that people usually are pretty okay with it. They're very conversant with the entire concept of it. They have tons of insurance people and financial advisors who have given them, the SIPs that is there. We don't intend to do that, and people will take care of it. So we are not worried from that standpoint. The intangible assets is where we believe that there is a lot more to be learned by all of us, right? Uh, so we divide them into three parts: productive assets, which is knowledge, reputation, and peers; vitality assets, balanced living, health, regenerative friendships; and transformative assets, so self-knowledge, tap into diverse networks, and open to new experiences. Although the thing is getting cut off, but essentially it is open to new experiences. And why are they intangible assets, and why do we consider them to be assets, right? Uh, so the challenge over here is there is no marketplace for it. You cannot go someplace and buy reputation, or you cannot go someplace and buy friendship. There are minimal substitutions, right? So you can't say, oh, just, oh, I lost, my health, but here it is, I have better friendships. It doesn't, they are both equally important, at certain point, and they are fairly irreversible. Once you have, lost health, yes, you can recuperate, but if it is, we are talking, when we say losing health is not about, having fever or something, right? When we say losing health means there's a genuinely serious case, then it becomes a bit difficult to come through. Or you've lost reputation, very difficult to gain back reputation, right? Yeah, let's go ahead. So the question really is, who are you? Okay. And why is this important? Because it is extremely critical on what are you pegging your identity on. Because based on what you peg your identity on, things will impact you. The surrounding things will impact you. For example, most of us end up pegging our identity on what we work on, our career paths. Hemant, we lost the slides.
Just a moment. Back.
Yep. So, yeah, so we are talking about so most of us end up pegging our identity on what we work on, right? Our career paths, or what's the commercial, materialistic, activity that we are doing, right? And which usually, you know, puts a lot of pressure on when there is a layoff and the identity crisis that comes with it. People who have been with Facebooks and Googles of the world, when they are laid off, they have a huge issue, right? They will go into depression, and we've seen multiple cases around that, right? So it's important to rethink on who am I, right? And think of yourself as a much broader and a larger person, you know, from a family standpoint, from a friendship standpoint. What are we emotionally attached to, right? Those standpoints. And we'll just highlight, a small anecdote kind of a thing. So there's this construction happening, right? And then there's a person who walks through, talks to the first construction worker, in terms of, what are you doing? क्या कर रहे हो? भाई साहब, ईंट उठा रहा हूँ. Very good. Goes to the next one. Says, what are you doing? It's like, बिल्डिंग बन रही है, मैं बिल्डिंग बना रहा हूँ. ठीक है. Goes to the third person, right? Says, what are you doing? It's like, मेरे राम का मंदिर बन रहा है, right? Now, technically, all three of them are doing the same thing, but it is about what do you align, what you're working with a much larger purpose in life, right? Defines, and then it helps at multiple levels, right? In terms of, we have seen that some of the people have so much energy, right? They just don't get tired. Whereas there is another set of people, by 11 o'clock in the morning, they are tired, right? And the reason is not because they don't have sufficient stamina or energy. It is just that they are so emotionally disconnected, or, so, mentally frustrated with the work that they are doing, is that there is, the body just saps the energy. I mean, the work just saps energy out of their body, correct? So that's also very important. So if you're not in the space where you think you need to be, then you should rethink on how you work on it, something that is closer to who you are and what you can emotionally connect with. And you know, so is a famous this from Matrix. Most of us might have seen that. So there is no escaping reason, no denying purpose as to what as for what we both know. Without purpose, we would not exist, right? Very important, right? And with that in mind, we come to the concept of Ikigai. I'm sure most of us would have seen it, heard about it, read the book. But I mean, me and Hemant were discussing, so I mean, mentally we are very clear on a certain thing. I mean, if we have to divide our life in two parts, it would be the first part in terms of how I reached Ikigai or my Ikigai, and the second part is how well did I utilize the Ikigai going forward to succeed in life, right? So if you have not reached your Ikigai, I would say you're still in the first half, right? And if you have not reached your Ikigai, the single most important element that you can do in your life right now is to figure out what your Ikigai is. It's very important, right? Maybe it may take you 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever, right? But very critical, because there is no hope for I mean, I'm not even trying to go into the spiritual aspect of moksha and all, but not even a, a consistent happiness on a daily basis if you are not in the space of Ikigai. Because if you are not there, every second, third, fifth day, you will find something missing in your life. And what is missing in your life will keep on changing. Hemant, you want to change the slide to the next one? So what is missing in your life will keep on changing, right? So I mean, if you're doing what you love, but you are not paid for it, so you are delightful and fullness, but there is no wealth because nobody is willing to pay you for it, right? So you always find cash flow issues, right? Uh, if you're not doing what you're good at, but you're doing the rest of it, then there is excitement and complacency, but a sense of uncertainty because you're fundamentally in your heart you're not good at it. Correct? So there's always that insecurity which creeps in, right? If you're Yeah, okay, fine. So this is essentially, what are the four critical, points of failures if we are not in tune with what our Ikigai is. And hence, as we said, there are two halves of your life. The first half, who am I and what is my Ikigai? And then the second half leads to success. A few things which keeps us away from what we truly need to achieve, right? So there's this story about, you'll see in circus and in a lot of other places, a mighty elephant is tied with a very thin rope, right? And we always keep on wondering why is that, right? It is because when the elephant was smaller, it was tied to a very strong chain. It tried to break free, but could not. And over a few years, they just resigned to the fact that I can never break free from this. And once they resign to the fact, then there is a rope which can be tied and they will never be able to break that as well because they will never try about it. Now, what we need to figure out is what are those chains that were tied to us and we are currently tied with thinner ropes, but we still can't see them. Very important. The other aspect of it is about cognitive biases in terms of things that we wrongly perceive or our mind in trying to process something faster ends up letting go of certain sort of information that is required. So those are very important. So uh, there are close to around 180 190 cognitive biases categorized in multiple forms. There's a very detailed 1 month program which we will talk about. So that's a 1 month program only on cognitive biases. Very important because when you're not clear on where you're going wrong, we end up blaming people around us, right? Or things around us for what is going wrong. And of course, they give you the illusion of free will. We end up thinking that we are in control, but usually we are not. It's very easy to fool us, right? Even a simple Starbucks 3 coffee sizes fools us in terms of buying something which is larger. So, So we do believe it's time for change. Long life can be a burden if it is spent in misery. So another interesting anecdote, right? So in mid 40s, 1940s, Einstein used to be a professor at Princeton. One of the years, he gives the question paper to the fourth year, final year students, right? And the student comes and says, but Dr. Einstein, you gave the same paper to the same students when they were in the third year. Okay. So I'll just repeat for people because a lot of times people miss it out. We are not talking about that a paper was given to somebody in 1943 and the next batch came in 1944 and they gave the same question paper. No, we are saying a question paper was given to somebody in 1943. When they graduated or went to the fourth year in 1944, the same question paper was given to the same set of students, right? So student obviously is extremely worried, how can you do this? And Einstein says, yes, but this year the answers are different. Now, why are we saying that, right? It's because life is a question. We can live to find the answers or we can create the answers. All of us usually end up asking the same questions with each of us, right? But what we need to look at is each of us has to find our own answers or we have to create our own answers. And each of us has a different answer to the same question. Hemant?
Okay. Great. So the objective of the webinar today was to introduce you to this whole concept that you will live longer and also refocus your attention to the actual problem at hand. How are you going to spend your time? How you are going to restructure your life, your mindset, your relationships? Yes, health is a supremely important factor, and so is your wealth. But I'm sure you will figure out a way to take care of that. And there are so many advisors who can help you with that. But your time, your relationships, and mindset, that's something not much of help is there outside. So you really need to take charge of that. So that was the idea, as an idea that was to introduce that to you today. And of course, you can take this idea forward and do it yourself. Try to figure out the mechanics of time. What do you plan to do with the next several decades of your life? Plan them out, stretch them out. To help some of you might need some hand holding. We have created a weekend retreat of 2.5 days where we take you through all the different modules in detail. And a few, those who would need further hand holding, it's a year-long journey where you actually drill down to the basic map of your life and create the map and start actioning it. So let me talk a bit about the retreat, the weekend retreat. We plan to have the weekend retreat in November. Friday 22nd evening it begins and it goes on till Sunday evening. Yes, it starts Friday evening. The day on Saturday and Sunday will start around 7 a.m. There's an optional walk and talk morning walk with us. It will be a free flow conversation about an hour. Go back to the rooms, get ready. And then from 9 a.m. till 7 p.m., we'll have 4 sessions of 2 hours each with adequate breaks in between. And then dinner, and then again, late night conversations, free flow conversations about everything related to the program, of life, of many, many things. No end time in sight for that. As long as people are happy to have the conversations, we'll be there. Of course, the next morning, Sunday morning, the day again begins at 7 a.m. So it will be intensive in that way because we want to literally use every minute and deliver value in taking that conversation about the Centennial Journey forward. Okay. At the end of this workshop, the entire retreat, you will have evaluated your structure of time, how time is to be structured ahead of your in your life, and you will start looking at your assets and start creating a plan for building them. And also, you will begin your planning for the 100-year multi-stage life structure that you have got, right? As part of that, there will be these 6 modules that we will work on. The first 3 modules are obviously the vitality assets, productivity assets, transformative assets, because these are what you will build your life with. Then we come to the restructuring of time. We look at the multi-stage life options as well as the future of work. And finally, the most important conversation, the logic of life. How do you see life and your cognitive biases? How does your thinking influence you? And how is your thinking being influenced by all these cognitive biases? So that's going to be the 6 modules across the thing. Now, if you look at the whole, I'm actually sharing the costing directly here because we are about now a month and a half away from the retreat. So we're actually going to start talking about the retreat to many people. Get a few people. This retreat is not going to be a crowded one. Very few people, because there are going to be many deep conversations which will happen as a group, but one-to-one also. So we are not going to have too many participants in the group. The retreat itself is a $3,000 value thing. Of course, you will be staying in that location. You're not going home once you arrive on Friday. Only Sunday will leave you. So accommodation, food at the hotel in Dubai, peak season. And of course, post the retreat, once we are done with the retreat in November, from January, we start every month, we have a one-to-one coaching session, right? Because once you have started to create that plan for yourself, you need to continue to work on that. We just don't leave you there. There are going to be 6 coaching sessions. So overall, the value of the whole retreat is close to about $5,000. But this is the first time we are announcing the retreat. So, and anyway, we plan to have the pricing around $3,000 to $5,000. We are still discussing where the final price will rest at. But since this is going to be our first retreat, we are going to bring down the price to $1,000 because it's the first one. So, as we say, inaugural offer is there. And we also feel that it will be great if you attend the retreat with your spouse. So, if you're attending with the spouse, it's not $1,000 into two, it's 1,750. So, that's another one. So, that's the pricing for the retreat. To give you a quick view of the 1 year plan, we commit to 100 hours of our time to your life journey. In the 1 year plan, there will be 11 modules spread across the 12 months. In each module across the 4 weeks of the month, we'll have 4 sessions. 2 will be group sessions, and again, 2 sessions will be one-to-one. Uh, we believe there is a lot of personalization and deep dive conversations that need to happen, which is why there is such a heavy component of one-to-one sessions. All the sessions will be online, but we plan even during that 1 year timeline to have at least 2 in-person gatherings, retreat mode kind of conversations, which will be to emphasize and actually drill down into the details of things and have lot more, lot longer conversations. At the end of that 1 year journey, you will have the map of your 100-year multi-stage life. You would have a working plan on which you would have already started to implement and an action plan to make that 100-year plan a reality. So that will be all about it. These will be the different modules, understanding your assets. So productivity assets, vitality assets, transformative assets. Will drill down, create your asset map that you can utilize. Then understanding your resources, which is your time and your skill sets. Then understanding yourself, logic of life, cognitive biases. 2 modules will deep dive into them and spend a month on them. And then we come to the whole scenarios of life, multi-stage life, future of life, psychodynamics of yoga, which is not the physical yoga do you do, but much beyond that. And then we come to, of course, after setting the foundation of your life with your assets, with your time, with your understanding of your own self, then we talk about the purpose of your life, because that's one of the north star, pole star kind of thing that will guide your life. And with all this information about yourself, your skill set, your purpose of life, you create the path that you will be navigating. You set your milestones and build the framework of your 100-year life. That's the 1 year journey. Very long, very intensive, very exhaustive. But let's say we are focusing on our retreat now. And just a gentle reminder that you might be thinking that we said that next year we are going to be 1 million people. but a small piece of information here that from 2010 to 2020 is when we went from 250 quarter million to half a million in 10 years. Then from half a million to a million, we have come in just 5 years. And this timeline will keep reducing and this doubling will keep happening in shorter time. There are going to be more and more centenarians across the globe. You have a good chance of being a centenarian. Your children have a much higher probability, almost a sure probability that they will be centenarian. So it's like, I mean, if you have a disease, you meet an accident, you might die early. But if you're going to die of old age, it might well be in the 90s and the hundreds, you might actually be a centenarian in that way. Okay. That brings us, of course, to our final reminder of the most important question: how you choose to use and structure the time on hand is at the heart of your response to a longer life, right? With that, we come to an assignment. Yes, there is an assignment. This assignment is obviously mandatory for all those who want to come for the retreat because it's like a qualifier question, but it's also the first step to your DIY of this whole concept. Few questions, 5 only. Do spend some time thinking about them and feel free to share the response with us. I'll be sharing this information in the WhatsApp group also, so you will have access to it. Define life in one sentence. This is your own understanding of your entire life and of life as a concept. Define it in one sentence. That's the first question. Second is, of course, a multi-pronged question. What have been the different transitions in your life, whether it's from school to college, college to work life to your first marriage, children, and beyond? All those transitions when life changed, how do you perceive them? How did these transitions impact you? And how did these transitions change you? How did they transform you? That's very important to understand because these changes happened to you or whether you made them happen. Because in future, you want to be in more control of your life. You want to control these changes. You want to formulate these changes rather than allow them to happen by themselves. Of course, the third question is about creating your asset inventory: vitality assets, productive assets, and transformative assets. You might have forgotten what these three are. So in the WhatsApp group, I'll share the slide in which we have described all these three assets. The fourth question: what are your top 5 goals of your life? Life goals, top 5. And the last question: would you like to attend the retreat in November? Yes and no. We are happy to hear both the answers, but we want to know why for both the answers. If you say yes, we would love to know why. And if you're saying no, we'd still love to know why would you not attend it. So these are the 5 questions. I'll be posting them in the WhatsApp group. And yes, Baba Moshai, जिंदगी बड़ी होनी चाहिए और अब तो लंबी भी होगी. With that, we come to the end of our presentation. Thank you very much for being here. We are now open to any questions you have. Let me just stop the recording for a moment. Still going on.